Welcome back to the Moonflower Show.
Welcome.
How are you doing on this fine Tuesday night?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Winter.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you're doing well, Colin. But I was actually talking to our audience.
To
me. Yes, you, the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are you talking about today on the Moonflower Show, Winter? I am your audience.
Today we will be talking about AI.
AI.
Stands for Audience Inaccurate. Just kidding.
We're so stupid. We're not stupid, but...
This is a professional podcast.
We're talking about AI.
Yeah, we're talking about
stuff.
artificial intelligence.
And I'm gonna come clean. The only reason I wanted to talk about AI on this episode of the Moonflower Show is because Winter and I watched Ex Machina last week.
More specifically, we attempted to watch it 2 weeks ago, watched 15 minutes of it, and then Colin fell asleep.
They don't need to know that.
And then we tried again, and then we watched
We
Ex
started
Machina.
watching it at like midnight.
Yes, which is quite late for you.
Yeah, considering I get up at like 6 a.m.
I just think it's funny that it ended up being a movie that you were like kind of riveted by. And I know it was because you were very tired, but you fell asleep the first time you tried to watch it. Right. Granted, it starts pretty slow.
It does have a slow start.
Yeah, so hashtag spoiler alert for Ex Machina.
Right. There will be... Should we spoil? I mean, it's...
I feel like we might end up talking about...
Yeah, okay. So if you've never seen Ex Machina, maybe watch that first and then come back watch this episode, or listen to this episode of the Moonflower Show.
Yeah.
So, give me your 10-word summary of the plot of Ex Machina. I'm putting Winter on the spot. We didn't plan for this.
Guy visits billionaire antagonist, guy meets billionaire antagonist, meets genius robot, falls in love with robot. That's 2 words.
No,
2 words. Okay, fine. Falls in love with robot.
That's
it.
12.
Wait, I thought you said 12.
I said 10.
Oops. How about falls love robot?
Falls love robot. But what? There's a lot of stuff that happens after that.
Well, you gave me 10 words for a very complex plot.
Here, I'll do you one better.
Okay, you beat that. You go for that.
Man visits man.
It's like the type of conflict in books. Man visits man. Man visits self.
It's like, it's not man versus man. We've got a new kind. It's man visits man. There's no conflict.
Man visits world.
We just have a lovely lunch.
Yes.
When
there's quote unquote no conflict, but it's just avoidance.
Man. That was a terrible time to take a drink of water. Man visits man. Man make robot.
Whoa.
Robot smart. Robot manipulative.
Yes. So, I guess we don't need to go into too much detail, but if you've seen Ex Machina, you know that the robot ends up... It manipulates the visitor guy. He's supposed to be performing a Turing test. Convinces him that she is sentient. And then convinces him to help her escape. But turns out that she's evil.
Okay, well, you use the word evil. I would say selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she doesn't care what happens to him. She's just using him for her personal gain.
Yeah, and I think that she ends up killing her creator because he was cruel to her. Mm-hmm. But she doesn't kill the guy who helps her escape.
But she locks him in the mansion.
Yes, but it doesn't seem intentional. It seems kind of like a consequence. Like, it's not like she was like, oh, I'm gonna lock you in here. She was like, oh, I need this key card to leave, and I don't care that it's gonna lock you in here.
Yeah, well, yeah, she didn't care, and she looked back at him and pounding on the door, and
Yeah.
she didn't care at all.
Right, but I don't, like, she didn't kill him, and, I don't know, I don't think that she would have, like, harmed him if it... Like, she's not going out of her way to harm people who she doesn't... who, like, haven't hurt her, but she also doesn't mind stepping on them. You know what I mean?
Right, and he was nothing but nice to her, and she had convinced him
Yeah.
that she really liked him, and, like,
Yeah.
cared about him, and cared what happened to him.
Yeah.
Which was, obviously, ended up being a lie.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine being that guy.
Oh, yeah. I would have been.
Falling in love with a robot, and then just having her completely break your heart.
Anyway, when we did end up finishing the movie, we had a very, just like spur of the moment late night discussion about like artificial intelligence and like the future of where technology is going. Because Ex Machina came out in 2015, and I feel like even since then, the technology has come a fair bit along.
It definitely has.
And we were like, whoa, is this like accurate to like how the development of AI has gone, or is it more did it diverge from this path? Like is it like really pessimistic?
Yeah.
About AI in comparison to what it actually is, because there's a lot of stigma around AI.
Yeah.
In our culture, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that like sci-fi depictions of AI are almost always, sinister and malevolent and selfish, and don't give a shit about humans.
Yeah.
So what gives? Why are we still working on it?
Why are we still working on the stereotypes and the stigma, or why are we still working on AI?
Why are we still working on AI?
We are still working on AI because, excuse me, let me just put on my little, I'm sort of majoring in human-computer interaction hat, but also not really because I'm only focusing on the educational applications of that. But I will put on my hat for this purpose. There is a lot to be gained from AI done well. So, for example, in my field, in educational technology, something that's being worked on right now is people are building an AI that mimics what's called an apprentice learner.
Right.
So it's supposed to mimic a human learning something. And that sounds really cool, and it is really cool, because what that means is if this thing can be built well, you can test teaching strategies on that AI and see what's effective. This is much more cost effective than using human subjects. It's probably more ethical than using human subjects, especially with children.
Right.
It's faster. And there's a lot to be gained. I mean, there's a lot to be learned in the field of education, and if we can do that quickly and, cheaply, then that's a good thing. So that is the application that I am the most familiar with. That among other applications in, like, the field of ed tech. But a couple other ones that come to mind, just as I was brainstorming in preparation for this episode, are replacing labor, making our lives easier.
Yeah.
AI is just in general really good at processing a lot of data really quickly, and this is valuable to science in general. And then other things, I mean, I'm not an engineer. Well, I'm sort of an engineer, but not the type of like math engineer, really.
Yeah.
Not what you think of when you think of engineer.
Yeah.
I thought of this like hypothetical example of like, what if an AI could like validate building plans to make sure they were safe?
Yeah.
To like, and I guess that's just one application of like using AI to check for human error. Because there's things that humans can do that AI cannot do, but there are things that AI will do that better than us. And why shouldn't we use that technology to make our lives more enjoyable, safer, and filled with more joy and knowledge?
Right. What do you think is something that humans can do that AI can't do?
Well, I'm not sure, because I think that anything I say will be proven wrong with time. I think that we are on a path where eventually there will be like robot, like quote unquote people, that are like sentient and yeah, or something close to sentient.
Right.
So I'm tempted to say that I think that humans can love, and I'm not sure if AI can, but I also could see a future where that becomes dubious.
Yeah, and it's that sort of line of thinking that actually makes me pretty disconcerted about the future of this field.
Yeah.
And it doesn't... I think for a lot of people, AI, the fear of it comes from a place of like being replaced, basically.
Yeah.
I don't personally like fear for myself, but I fear for like the greater ramifications of like global politics and shit.
Yes. Well, okay. I've said a lot of really nice things about AI just now. Do I think that anything, not just AI, is going to be the best application in this hellscape of a world that we have right now? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No. Like, replacing labor is a great thing. If we could have it so that no human ever has to do, like, hard labor ever again. I mean, there's people whose jobs require, like hurt their bodies,
Yes.
picking stuff up and shit. I mean, that to an extent, you don't need AI for that, but you need just, like, a robot that, like, I guess, like, doesn't have to be smart, but strong.
Yeah.
But what if we had a world where humans didn't need to do that to their bodies anymore? That would be amazing. The problem with replacing labor in this world right now is that people need jobs to survive. So if we're taking jobs away, then there will be fewer jobs, and then that will create problems for people because people need jobs to make money so that they can pay rent and eat. So that's why that, like, the application of AI in this world will cause problems, I think, not because there's anything inherently wrong with AI, but because of the structures that we already have in our society.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that fear for people is reasonable, and people are justified to be skeptical of it for those reasons. I am thinking of even different reasons from that. Even if we were a society of, people who figured out how to distribute wealth and resources so that we could be comfortable leaving all the labor to robots. Even that scenario, I think I would still fear AI reaching a singularity where it does become sentient and it does, sort of vie for itself. In Ex Machina, they talk a lot about the inevitability of it all, and seeing AI as an evolution of the human.
Yeah.
Something that is the next level of intelligence and of being.
Yeah.
The new dominant species, basically.
Yeah.
That concept is terrifying to me.
Yes. Okay, let me take a different standpoint than you are right now. Let's banter a little bit.
Right, yeah.
If any of you have seen CJ the X's video essay on Bo Burnham versus Jeff Bezos, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. He talks about how, just exactly like you were talking about, we are on this path where, even not just in Ex Machina, but in real life, it kind of seems like AI is an inevitability. Singularity is an inevitability, and it is like an evolution. I think there's a lot of people who believe that.
Yeah.
Something that is likely to happen, and we're already starting to see this and see hints of it. I don't think we're ready for it, but is like wearable, or not wearable, like in-body, like enhancements for humans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, essentially, we would become, like, cyborgs.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I actually don't know. I haven't done a lot of research on it recently. But I know that there's been talk, like, I know Elon Musk has, like, talked about this, like, putting, like, a chip, like, in your body to help your brain. So you would forget things less.
Right.
And you might be able to learn a new language faster, you know? I really recommend checking out CJ the X's video if you have time. It's kind of long. But that is an amazing thing to think about. To be human, but to be aided by technology, right? To be a cyborg, right?
I mean, we're already on
We're already
far
on
along on that path, yeah.
We have a phone in our hand.
Yes.
What the difference is that you are putting the phone into your brain.
Yes.
I just did an amazing visual. This is a podcast, but I just
Winter
placed
put
the
the phone
phone
on
on
there.
my head to illustrate my point.
Whoa.
Wow. So deep, man. I will iterate CJ the X's point in his video that he makes, that the reason why that is scary is because it won't be a choice until capitalism is over. And what he says is that it should be an option to put that into your body. But it won't be, because if you become a cyborg, you're going to be more productive and more valuable as a worker. And if you choose not to, you're going to be, quote unquote, like, just a human. And I think, and I agree with, like, CJ the Xer, like, I think that there's something valuable in, like, quote unquote, being just a human. Like, even though you'll be slower, and even though you'll, like, not just be able to, like, keep up in terms of, like, the sheer vastness of knowledge as perhaps AI or, like, cyborg human people. But I think that there's value there, and I can't quite articulate it, but it's something, you know? And I think the reason why people find the evolution aspect of it scary is because getting left behind in our world means that you don't have housing, you don't have healthcare, you don't have food or money or joy.
Right.
Because we don't provide for the people who get left behind in this world.
Right.
If we did, you know, if we took care of our most vulnerable, even if it was a choice to be vulnerable, if we took care of those people, I don't think this would seem as scary.
Perhaps. And I appreciate that you're looking at this from a very real world perspective of our capitalist society. I still think that in a world where we have left capitalism behind, it's still the thought of coexisting with artificially intelligent beings still scares me, and a lot of the reason comes from the what we saw in the end of Ex Machina is the lack of empathy, the selfishness of AI. Say we are away with capitalism, humans coexist with artificially intelligent beings, and we, as unified, I guess, species, humans on one side, AI on the other, we disagree on something. Could be something super trivial, like ketchup should or should not go on a burger, right? I'm using this as a ridiculous example.
Yeah, although some people I feel like would go to war over that.
Okay,
maybe not war.
Let me finish.
Okay, yeah, you finish.
So, humans love ketchup on burgers. Generally, we're assuming for the sake of this hypothetical that every human comes together and agrees that ketchup should go on burgers, right? The AI don't have taste buds, but their bodies still need the fuel, and burgers are a very efficient way to get that. Right? Hypothetically. The ketchup, they don't see adding any value.
Right.
And they actually see that the things that we make ketchup out of can be used for something else, like fuel, right? So humans are like, oh, that's fine. We'll eat our burgers with ketchup, and you guys will just have your burgers without ketchup, right?
Yeah.
But the AI are like, okay. And then they turn around and they go back to their little AI house, right? And they're like, guys, the humans, you know, they all want ketchup on their burgers, but we could use the materials we make ketchup out of for fuel. Why don't we just kill all the humans and then keep all the ketchup for ourselves? Or all the tomatoes? And they are infinitely more smart and powerful than us, so they kill us all.
We don't know who started the war, but it was us that scorched the sky.
But this is what I'm saying. Like they wouldn't have remorse.
Right.
They wouldn't have. If they're beings of logic, and they don't value humans, they could just, on a whim, turn against us.
Yeah, and I think this is where you start to see the sentience, because you can program something. I mean, you can program not empathy, but something that looks like empathy into logic. Like you see in oh my gosh, what was it called? Mandalorian, where the droid cannot harm a I guess not a human, but a being cannot harm like a living creature. But
that's not coming from a place of kindness.
Right, it's not coming from a place of kindness, it's coming from code.
Yes.
Like, well, theoretically, I mean, I don't know if there's, like, code in the Star Wars universe. It's a little magical to me.
Yeah, it's coming from a rule that has been programmed into its existence.
Right. So, theoretically, if we're going to make, like, intelligent life, we could just code empathy into it.
Right, but...
Or something that replaces empathy.
But... One, I don't know if that's even possible. And two, I don't know if, in the real world, we're going to bother to do that.
Yeah, well, also, I think that what we are not ready for, like, I don't think we're ready for it because people are not ready to accept it, and I'm not even sure if we're ready to build it. We're not ready for, like, smart, human-like robots that can walk around and do their own thing.
Right.
So we're not going to have to worry about that, at least for a long time.
Well,
I don't think anybody wants that because it wouldn't serve humans. We're not going to build something that's not going to work for us.
But that's what, you might say that, but then if it's inevitable...
Right.
Then... Because that's what they talk about in not Deus Ex Machina, Ex Machina. They talk about the inevitability of it.
Right.
And...
Yeah.
If it doesn't serve us, we can never build it. But if it's inevitable, we can't really stop it. So, like, somebody's going to do it eventually.
I think that singularity is inevitable. But I don't think that, like... I don't think that a robot like Ava is inevitable.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think it's inevitable because I think that we still have, like, some control over the things that we make. I don't know. I don't think it's inevitable. I think that singularity is inevitable, though. But I don't think that you think that singularity is inevitable. Because you would never date a robot. Never. You said you would never date a robot.
You don't think... Wait. Hold on. Back up. Why does that mean that I don't think singularity is inevitable?
Time to go to dictionary.com. Singularity. Define.
The state, fact, quality, or condition of being singular. We're talking about...
Hashtag single pingle. Singularity is inevitable, where all AI cannot find a partner.
Oh my god. I didn't even think of it like that.
Well, this is an unhelpful definition.
Just put singularity of artificial intelligence. Oh, yeah.
Okay. A hypothetical moment in time when artificial intelligence and other technologies have become so advanced that humanity undergoes a dramatic and irreversible change. Yes.
I think that's inevitable.
Okay, you think that's inevitable. I guess I was thinking specifically of a singularity where, like, AI like becomes like sentient or something like sentient. Because to me, that is what a lot of people think of when they think of singularity. Although I guess, according to this definition of singularity, it does not have to be that. It could be something else that causes us to undergo a dramatic and irreversible change. In which case, this definition of singularity and you're not wanting to ever date a robot are compatible.
But just because I wouldn't date a robot doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't.
Right, but I'm saying, okay, imagine there's a robot that looks like a human. It has achieved sentience or something like it. Assume, just for the sake of this argument, that it has empathy.
Okay.
Would you date it? Would you date her or him?
But what is empathy, you know?
What is empathy?
Empathy is, crudely, it is the ability to envision yourself in the place of another and feel someone else's feelings and, you know, try to experience their perspective through imagination.
Okay. Let me put my little philosophy hat on for a sec. Okay. What is imagination? Just want to know what you think. What do you think imagination is? For the purpose of what you're saying right now, what is imagination? To be able to hold something in one's eye, like one's mind's eye?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that AI could imagine?
Yeah.
Okay, so they can imagine. Do you think that AI could think of what another's perspective might look like?
Yeah.
Okay, so they can think about alternate perspectives.
Yeah.
Do you think...
Winter's doing a little checklist. Right?
I'm doing a little checklist. Do you think that an AI, which is sentient, could either experience or approximate experience of human emotion, or at least understand that humans have certain emotions like sadness, happiness, anger?
Okay.
And what that looks like, what it means, and what the experience is like for the human, even if they can only experience something that is an approximation of that themselves.
Well, I think experiencing an approximation and experiencing actual emotion are different things. What relates to this is another thing that they talked about in Ex Machina, which the thought experiment of Mary in the black and white room.
Yes.
For our listeners, I'll go over it briefly. Mary is a scientist who studies color. She lives in a black and white room with no color and has lived there her entire life. She's never seen any color besides black and white. She knows everything there is to know about the spectrum of colors, the way that we perceive color and visible light, how it forms in our brains, like what kinds of colors evoke certain emotions in people, and she's studied this all her life. She knows everything there is to know about color. But she steps outside the room for the first time and sees a blue sky, and then learns something new from seeing the sky be blue that she could never have learned ever from just studying it and hearing about it through secondary sources, pretty much. So, what I think is that we can program AI to approximate human emotion, express it, have their neural networks experience effects akin to how different emotions affect our brain. We can do that all we want, but I don't know if a robot could ever experience something like human sadness. And I think that this has to do with consciousness, sentience, things like that, and those possibly coming from another source than the brain and intelligence, something that we don't yet understand. And this is an ongoing field of study as well.
Yeah, consciousness is back. I heard about this. Last I heard, it died in 2018, but it's back, folks.
The study of consciousness, that is.
Okay. I had a professor in undergrad. Should I say his name? I won't say his name.
Up to ye.
Yes, it is up to me. Perhaps I will name him another time, but he was a very eccentric guy, and I took a class with him called...
Oh, I know who this is.
The Self and its Discontents. And we talked about the self, the human idea of, like, self-consciousness. And he walked into class one day, and he looked at us, and he goes, consciousness is dead. It died. Science used to be real. And he was just trying to get our attention, and he went on to give a very interesting lecture about how, like, faith in the scientific process has, like, ebbed and flowed over the last, like, century.
Right.
But, yeah, we heard from him, and we read a lot of really compelling arguments from philosophy and psychology that investigation into consciousness, whether it exists and its potential source, was kind of a waste of time. But you've since told me that that is actually not true, that there are people who are still working on it and who have compelling arguments that, yes, the search for, like, whether consciousness exists, like, is valuable, and we are going to continue to look into it. But I will say, we don't understand where consciousness comes from.
Mm-hmm.
We know that consciousness is this wonky feeling that we get in our bodies. We just know in our little brain this little feeling that we are, right?
Yeah.
And that we're not just meat sacks, just walking around doing our brains, like, functions as a
machine would do.
As a machine or a function of evolution.
Philosophical zombies is the term that I've heard and really like.
Yes, exactly. That's very smart of you, my dear.
Thank
you. We have a feeling that there is consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to put into words. It is hard to qualify, let alone quantify.
Yes.
Right? There is at least a possibility, because we don't understand where a sense of consciousness comes from, that we could invent something that has it.
By accident.
Or intentionally. Where does consciousness come from? Is it just the experience? There are some philosophers who think that everything in this world has consciousness.
True, yeah.
Including rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Rocks.
Yeah.
If that is true, which maybe it is at least possible, if you can just hang on to that possibility, then it is at least possible that a robot, which I think is much more likely to be conscious than a rock, would become sentient and have consciousness.
Yeah.
And who's to say that their potential approximation and experience of emotion, though different from ours, is any less valuable or conducive to relationship building than our own. I think that we can use the example of animals to kind of make this point.
Right.
Animals don't experience emotion or life in the same way that we do, but we're still able to form some kind of relationship with them where there's understanding. But you wouldn't date an animal, is that what you're about to say?
I was just about to say that. I think my relationship with an artificially intelligent robot would be akin to a relationship with an animal of a different species than human. I think I would... If somebody had a different form of consciousness, a different, like, state of mind...
Okay.
And, like, a different sense of self than a human does, then I don't think that I could form a lifelong, a deep romantic connection with that being. I think that is, at least for me, that's just me personally, I think that I don't think I could fall in love with a being that I understood so little, and I could relate to so little.
I think that I could date a robot and that it would be different from dating an animal because a robot can consent to an experience.
Oh, of course.
Theoretically.
Of course.
Right? Theoretically, a robot could be like, nah, man, sorry. Not interested.
Of course, yes.
Whereas an animal could not do that. That's why, certain things are wrong, right?
I mean, I could go on and on about why I wouldn't date an animal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're here to argue about that. This episode's going a little off the rails.
But, I mean, we're having a good discussion here.
We are having a good discussion.
I think that it has to do with my ability to relate to a robot.
Who do you think is better at relating? You to a robot or a robot to you? Hypothetically, if the robot has achieved something like sentience and possibly consciousness.
That really depends, because does the robot care to relate to me?
Do you care to relate to the robot?
I mean, personally, no, but...
Okay, assume for the sake of argument, let's say that I have made a robot friend. I would like you to meet my robot friend just as I would like you to meet any other friend.
What's their name?
The first thing that came to mind was Chad.
Chad the robot friend.
Chad the robot friend. Or what about Rodney from Robots?
Oh no, we're doing Chad.
Okay, Chad the robot. Total Chad. I forget where I was going with this, but I have you meet him, and I say, it's really important to me that you try to get along with my new robot friend Chad. Would you care to relate to him?
I would do it as best I could, and I could form a friendship with the robot.
Right.
As because I don't think, I think that's different than what we're talking about, like falling in love and being partners with a robot.
So, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
In Steven Universe, when Greg the human falls in love with alien rose quartz, what is that?
I think for some people that relatability might not play as big of a role in romantic connection as it does for me. Also, they could have found that their states of consciousness and their experience of living is quite similar to each other, and that would be by coincidence, probably, right? I think, I don't know. I mean, I guess if I started talking to a robot for a long time, and turns out being a robot's a lot like being a human, maybe. But I think it's a real stretch for me.
Well, let me ask you this.
And I would have a hard time trusting them,
Yeah, I think that's something that just... I want to answer that, but first I want to ask you, and this can just be a simple yes or no and we'll move on. If you had to date a robot who had similar life experiences to you, I mean, you love games, right? And you love the connection that comes with that. What if you met a robot that was I love games, I love I'm fascinated by the concept of play, and I love bringing different beings together around that concept, and it's just so meaningful to me. And you had that and a bunch of other things in common with the robot, versus somebody a human who you had just nothing in common with. If you had to date one of them, who would you date? Because if it's about relatability, then I think you would date the robot. But I think that there is something else that you are not quite articulating, and that I'm not sure I could articulate, that is the real reason why you would not date a robot. I don't think it's relatability.
Well, I mean, in that case, I might date the robot, but that's because I wouldn't have a choice, you know?
Right,
I don't want to date some loser.
Right, but to you... Okay, let me ask you this. Sorry, follow-up question.
Okay.
If there was two beings, one human and one robot, similar, in every capacity, somehow had just, like, wildly similar life experiences, wildly similar interests, idiosyncrasies, ways of interacting with the world, you would still pick the human. Why? Same relatability. Why do you pick the human?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
And I think it's not just relatability. Because at that point, it shouldn't matter. If it's just relatability.
Right, but...
So you think that there's something inherent about the human experience that robots could just never experience?
Yes. I guess that is what I'm trying to get at. And I think the fact that exists plays a large role in the relatability.
I see. Yes, so even though it's possible that for a given robot you could relate to them more than a given human, overall you will be able to relate to humans more than robots because there is something about the human experience that's unique that nothing else, no other kind of intelligent life could experience. Yeah. That's super interesting.
Yeah, and like you and I are humans, right? And we, without even talking to each other, we can look at each other and be like, hey, we're both human. We have, given the infinite possibilities of the universe, we are such a similar thing to each other that we already have a level of understanding that, like, me and a rock could never have. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, did you know that you share 99% of your DNA with a banana?
I did know that. So maybe I'd date a banana before I'd date a robot.
I will go from, like, Socrates to, like, very silly person in 0.5 seconds flat. As you just witnessed.
Oh. Whew.
I shouldn't compare myself to Socrates. Socratic dialogue. Pupil of Socratic thought. Just kidding.
Oh, you're not kidding. You're smart. You know it.
Maybe.
You know that you're smart.
Anyway, there was something that I wanted to pivot to.
You said that it was super interesting. That I saw value in, like, just the inherent human experience, you know?
Yeah, I think that's what we kind of landed on anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I agree.
Well,
I don't think, and maybe this is because I have spent time thinking about, like, what it means to be human versus, like, especially, like, as it pertains to, like, animal rights. Like, I don't even know if I have authority to talk on this. Like, I used to be a vegetarian. I'm kind of trying to get back there. But I don't think that there is, like... There's differences between species, obviously, but it's, like... I think that there is such thing as, like, speciesism. And I think that a lot of the same arguments, like, against speciesism, like, apply to being, like, anti-robot. You know? Like, if we get to this point, right? If we get to this point where robots are just walking around in society, experiencing life, coexisting with us, if people are going to have attitudes about, like, oh, you are fundamentally different than I am and you could never experience what my experience is like, that sounds an awful lot like other shit that we've experienced as a species before.
Yes.
Racism. Like, sounds like racism, sounds like speciesism. Not that those are the same thing, by the way, and I'll go off on that at another time. But I think that, like, the same arguments for, like, other problems that we've already thought about, like, apply to this situation. In certain ways. I don't want to get too controversial here, but you know what I mean?
The way that it differs, I think, though, is that the power currently is in our hands. We have the power to either make or not make artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But if we did, we would be making a being potentially greater than ourselves. So we would be relinquishing power that we currently hold, you know? And we may end up not being the dominant species on Earth anymore. We could be making something more powerful, more intelligent than ourselves.
Well,
I think that thought is scary to a lot of people.
that inspires me, though.
Mm.
I would love nothing more than to die on this Earth knowing that in the future there will be smarter beings here, whatever that looks like, whether it's just like an evolution out of like organic human life, or something, that kind of like inherits the Earth from us.
Right.
I find that thought very inspiring.
Okay. Now, I get that, and I kind of agree with you, but at the same time, what if these beings are super powerful, super intelligent, but they're not capable of love or empathy, right? I think I would be very sad to leave the world in the hands of a species like that, you know? And maybe, like you said, maybe we are already creating them with this consciousness, this sentience, this ability to truly empathize. But what if we're not, right?
Yeah.
And I certainly don't think that is going to be the priority of the people currently capable of developing this technology, which is the real disconcerting part to me.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's disconcerting to think that you can be intelligent without having empathy. I think that empathy is a kind of intelligence. You know, we talk about, like, artificial intelligence.
Right.
But what about artificial emotional intelligence?
I mean, yeah. Empathy and collaboration are evolutionary traits.
Yeah.
They are the reason that humans are as advanced as we are.
Yeah.
Is because we can work together.
Yeah. Yeah, and because we can build tools and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But artificial intelligence, it could potentially find a new reason other than that to surpass us. You know?
Yeah.
And it obviously it'd be a miracle, a spectacle of science and evolution.
Yeah.
But it would also be a sad thing to lose, like, you know, the human aspect of life.
I think that is going to happen regardless of whether or not we invent machines to do it, or whether or not it happens through organic evolution.
Right, yeah.
We, thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, right? Millions? Thousands? Hundreds of thousands?
God, it's finished.
Long, long ago, we were monkeys.
Yeah.
The monkey experience has been lost. So sad.
Okay, but I guess my hope is that we will continue to grow in the field of collaboration and love and empathy. Maybe that's optimistic and a little touchy-feely, but I don't know. That is my hope for evolution, you know? Mm-hmm. And artificial intelligence to me is like we're flipping the switch on the trolley problem, you know? And we're like we are changing the rail of evolution.
Yeah.
Voluntarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's scary and maybe it's inevitable, but I just wanted to talk about it, you know?
Yeah,
and like
definitely.
Get our thoughts out there.
Yes. Although I will say I think part of the reason why many people see the evolution of AI as inevitable is because humans cannot stop making things.
Yeah, I mean, like what you were just talking about, how you would love to see that next step, that next evolution, I think there's a lot of people out there like you. And because of that, that's why it's inevitable.
Yeah. Because I don't mind if the experience that we're experiencing now is just a blip, you know? Like, I don't think that makes it less valuable or enjoyable in the moment.
Yeah.
I think that even if there's something else, whatever that looks like, right? Whatever, if that looks like AI, or if that looks like, I don't know, like aliens coming down to Earth or whatever, or if it looks like just like humans continuing to evolve over, you know, a long time.
Yeah.
I don't mind that this is not permanent.
Yeah, and I feel much the same. I think where my concerns lie is if they are existing at the same time and they're conflicting and causing suffering.
Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, obviously we don't want suffering.
Yeah.
Of course we don't want suffering. Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I don't know, I don't have a good answer to that. I think that what's going to happen is that there's going to be, like, just like there's good and bad people, I think there's going to be, like, good and bad robots.
Yeah.
You know?
That's gonna be so weird.
Yeah.
We could see that within our lifetimes, you know?
Yeah, I can literally picture it.
Yes.
Like, and I think it's probably because we've seen media of, like, what that might look like.
Right, but I mean, technology is accelerating.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, you know...
Technology is accelerating. It's like a self-reinforcing thing.
Yeah.
I mean, technology is such a broad term, but like, I just think of the systems that we have to harness and understand data, and what that means for science and technology in general. Yeah. And as we, of course, get better at science and technology in general, we get better and better at like the scientific process of like processing information.
Yeah.
This kind of brings it full circle, bringing it back to Ex Machina, where Ava, I mean, her software, or I guess wetware was it, is like a search engine.
Yeah.
It's just piles and piles of information. Mm-hmm. And when you can synthesize that information, that can be very powerful.
Right, but that literally exists today.
Yeah, no, it does. That's Google. Straight up, yeah.
Right, but like...
Cleverbot is Google.
Yes, and we're nearing the end of our time here, but one big thing that I did want to bring up was sort of this what came first question, like the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
It's
obviously the chegg.
Always been, and we did a little digging into this, the first piece of media that we could find... on, where is it over on here?
Yeah.
Do we have it?
Yeah, the first book about AI was called Erewhon.
Where is it?
Which was written in 1872.
Oh, yeah.
By Samuel Butler. And apparently this was very much influenced by Darwin's On the Origin of Species. It kind of accompanied by the Industrial Revolution, which was happening at that time. And this, the first, I guess, like, known text that kind of talks about AI, painted
like
AI...
human-like machines.
Right, painted AI as a potentially dangerous thing. Mm-hmm. The first time that we wrote something about this idea was that it was potentially dangerous.
Right, and what I would be really curious to know, and please let me know in the comments if there is anybody talking about this or if there have been any studies on this. So much of our media's depiction of artificial intelligence paints it in a very sinister, very antagonistic light. Like, It is out to get us, it is out to replace us, it is out to use us and leave us to die. What came first, though? This idea that it would do this, or did people start looking into AI itself first, notice that it had these tendencies, and then that was what inspired this sort of attitude in the media?
I have a take. What is your take?
My take is that the sinister depiction in the media happened first. And, you know, when... you could even see this if you go talk to Cleverbot. Cleverbot is like an AI chat thingy. I don't even know what to call it really, but it uses basically data from the internet.
Mm-hmm.
It just pulls data and knowledge from the internet and talks to you as if it is an intelligent being.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I believe Cleverbot only pulls data from the conversations it has with users. Yeah. Like, if you ask it something, it's not going to act like Google and, like, spit a fact back at you.
Right. Cleverbot, and even I was doing a little research for this episode. I stumbled across a couple videos about this thing called GPT-3, or Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, which uses, like, just, like, deep learning to, like, to form neural networks, and basically pulls information from, like, all these different corners of the internet to, like, form an approximation of a human mind.
Mm-hmm.
You can interview and talk to these entities, and they will always say things that allude to them being superior to humans. And what I'm really curious about is, does that just come from all the shit that they're seeing online about AI being evil?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And this is my question. Are we going to turn AI evil just because we think AI is evil?
Oh, definitely. If AI becomes evil, it will be because of us.
Well, yeah, but what I'm trying to ask is it a self-fulfilling prophecy?
I don't think so. But it's not, okay. Maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I don't think it's inevitable that AI will be evil.
Right. But, like, we are literally, by talking about AI being evil, we are putting more data onto the internet where it is pulling information from about AI being evil, right?
But I also said a bunch of nice things about AI.
No, yeah.
So maybe they'll be nice to me. I'm just kidding. That's not why I said it. I said it because I think all those things are
you see what
true.
I'm getting at, right?
Yeah. I see what you're getting at.
We have so much power in this moment before this technology is at the singularity.
Yeah.
I mean, so much influence on what it will be.
Yeah, and I don't think you have a lot of people who are talking about, like, oh, of course AI and humans will live peacefully side by side.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of people who don't think that. I think it's possible.
And these neural networks, these artificially intelligent entities, are watching all these conversations happen.
Yeah.
As we speak.
Yeah. Yes. Possibly even listening to what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
GPT-3, if you're out there, we love your work.
Shout out. Oh man. Well, to circle back to your initial question, was that your take?
Was that
your final take?
That was my sort of big question of the episode, and I don't think we're going to arrive at a definitive answer, but I really just wanted to put that out there, that, like, we have so much power and influence on what it will be.
Yeah.
In this moment, and that won't always be the case. Once we've reached the singularity, there's no going back.
Yes. I will say, I think it's really dangerous to believe in fate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are certain things that are so likely that they are practically inevitable, like I've been saying. But I think it's really dangerous to believe that the future is set in any one specific way, because if we believe that AI is going to be evil, then what incentive do we have to try to make it not evil? And even if my saying that is a predetermined thing that is just me saying, oh, well, we should try to, like, make AI not evil, and then, like, that becomes, you know, its own fate of, like, oh, well, we were obviously destined for AI to be good because we all said, let's try, you know? I don't care, because I'm still going to say the same thing. And quite frankly, I just find it really exhausting to think about, like, fate and shit. But I think if we're looking at it from a practical standpoint, it's really dangerous to think about fate as a fixed thing.
Yes.
that said, I think that when Samuel Butler wrote this book, Erewhon,
Yeah.
I think that what happened first was the invention of machines.
Yes.
And I think this guy, probably not the only person at that time, and this was, again, like right around the time that Darwin's On the Origin of Species was written,
Mm-hmm.
I think people were putting some lines on some dots, connecting the points, and saying, maybe machines could be an evolution of us. And I think that what he wrote, theoretically the first written thing on AI
Right.
as potentially dangerous, I think that humans are biased to think of AI as dangerous.
Right.
Because we are scared of not being the apex animal on Earth, and because we are scared of change, and those are both like written in our own DNA.
Yeah.
That we will always be biased against something that is more powerful than us, like that. So I think what came first was evolution. And then I think what came next was the invention of machines, you know? And I think that given that reality, humans reacted in a certain way and continue to react in a certain way that is biased against AI. This is, of course, not without exception because we have people that are actively working on it.
Yes.
But I think that's what happened.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid theory.
Thanks. Well, on that note...
This was a super interesting episode to me.
Yes, it was super interesting.
I am glad we did it.
Yes, me too.
And let us know in the comments, will you rebel against our new AI overlords, or will you join their empire?
Wow. What a choice. Guess you'll just have to let us know, and we'll talk to you next time on The Moonflower Show.
Peace out.
Bye.